The music stopped before I realized it was because of me. The air in the wedding hall turned thick, the kind of silence that burns. My son stood there in his tuxedo, eyes cold, while every guest turned to watch the mother no one wanted. The flowers smelled too sweet, the lights too bright, everything cruelly perfect for the moment my heart broke. If you've ever trusted the wrong person, subscribe and tell me where you're watching from. Because that day, I learned betrayal doesn't always come from enemies. Sometimes it wears the face you raised. That was the moment everything started to unravel. It happened on a warm afternoon in June. The string quartet had just finished playing when I felt the weight of every eye in that church turn toward me. My son, my only child, stood at the altar, tall, handsome, nervous, and radiant beside his new bride. But the moment our eyes met, I knew something inside me had shattered for good. I had risen from my seat, heart full, ready to give him the small gift I'd kept tucked in my purse. A locket his father had given me before he passed, meant to be my quiet blessing. But before I could reach him, he looked at me with a coldness I had never seen. The silence that followed was unbearable. I froze, standing there like an unwanted guest at my own son's happiness. The whispers began, soft and cutting. I could feel the heat rise up my neck, the kind of shame that leaves you hollow. I don't remember sitting down again. I just remember staring at my trembling hands, wondering how love could turn so quickly into humiliation. My son had chosen someone else to take my place in his heart long before that ceremony began. But as I sat there, surrounded by the polite smiles of strangers, something shifted. The pain didn't fade. It hardened into clarity. Whatever had happened to bring us here wasn't just about that day. It was deeper, older, and before it was over, the truth, his bride's truth, would tear everything open. When my husband passed, Daniel was only 7. I remember sitting at the kitchen table that night, his small hand gripping mine, asking if I was going to be okay. I told him I would be, as long as I had him. From that day on, my life became about keeping my promise. Every lunch packed, every scraped knee kissed, every late night study session. I poured everything I had into raising a kind, grounded young man. And for years, it felt like we were doing just fine. Daniel grew up thoughtful, gentle, the kind of man his father would have been proud of. When he brought Lily home for the first time, I remember feeling a kind of relief. She was radiant, graceful, polite, with a voice that could melt a room. I told myself my son had finally found happiness, someone to share his life with. But over time, the shine began to dull. Lily smiled a lot, but her eyes never stayed still long enough to see you. She complimented my home but always mentioned how small it was compared to her parents' place in the city. When I offered to cook Sunday dinner, she suggested takeout instead. I noticed how Daniel started dressing differently, talking about promotions and cars and things that never used to matter to him. I tried to ignore the unease. I told myself every mother feels replaced at some point, that maybe I was overreacting, jealous even. But deep down, something didn't sit right. The way she looked at me when she thought I wasn't watching. The way Daniel's voice changed when she entered the room. Softer, cautious, almost rehearsed. Still, I stayed quiet. Because love does that. It blinds you to what's right in front of you when all you want is to see your child happy. Looking back now, I can see the moment it all started to slip away. I just didn't know then that silence would become my greatest mistake. The wedding would make sure I never forgot it. The hall smelled of roses and champagne. Soft music floated through the air, and I remember thinking how beautiful it all looked. White lilies along the aisle, the sunlight spilling through stained glass, the sound of vows spoken in trembling voices. For a moment, I almost forgot where I was, almost believed this day was as perfect as it appeared. Then I saw her eyes, Lily's, watching me from across the room, a flash of discomfort, quickly masked by a smile. I knew, in that instant, I didn't belong there. My presence had become a stain on her picture-perfect day. When Daniel turned toward me, my heart lifted, hoping for a glimpse of the boy I raised. But what I saw instead was hesitation, shame, something rehearsed behind his eyes. The officiant's voice faded into a blur. The air thickened. Guests began whispering. I felt it before I understood it. The moment my son decided his new life couldn't include me. There were no words exchanged, just a subtle gesture, a quiet motion toward the door. I stood still, unable to move. My hands shook as I reached for my purse, pretending I hadn't felt the humiliation settle deep into my chest. The silence that followed was louder than any music that played before. My footsteps echoed against the marble as I walked away, every step heavier than the last. I didn't dare look back. Outside, the summer heat hit my skin, but I felt frozen. My body moved on its own, but inside, something had broken clean through. I had spent my life protecting my son from every hurt, every disappointment, and now, he was the one who cut deepest. I didn't cry that day, not in front of them. The tears would come later, in the quiet of my empty home. But as I sat alone that night, replaying every look, every whisper, I felt something else rise within me, a stillness sharper than anger. A mother's love doesn't disappear, it transforms. He may have chosen her over me, but I knew what she was hiding. And someday, he would too. The morning light crept through the blinds like an uninvited guest. The house was silent, except for the faint ticking of the clock above the stove. On the counter sat the wilted bouquet I'd brought home from the wedding, a reminder of everything that was supposed to be beautiful, but wasn't. I hadn't slept. My mind kept replaying the moment, the faces, the quiet horror of realizing my son had chosen to turn his back on me. I sat at the kitchen table, still wearing yesterday's clothes, the untouched coffee in front of me turning cold. There's a strange calm that follows heartbreak, the kind that settles in when the tears have run out. I wasn't angry anymore, just emptied. Then the phone buzzed. My son's name lit the screen. My hands trembled, but I answered. His voice was polite, distant, as if nothing had happened. He said they needed the keys to the lake house for their honeymoon. I agreed. Of course. What else could I do? I told him where to find them, kept my tone soft, measured. But inside, something shifted. The lake house had been my husband's favorite place. After his passing, I renovated it, added new locks, cameras, and a full smart security system. I'd told no one, not even Daniel. Maybe it was instinct, or maybe it was preparation for a moment like this. As I hung up, I looked toward the window where sunlight glinted off the wedding card still lying unopened on the counter. The pain was still there, but beneath it, a quiet certainty began to take root. I had spent years protecting my son from lies, from disappointment, from truth itself. But this time, the truth was the only thing that could save him. I didn't plan to hurt anyone. I only planned to watch, to understand, to wait for what I already knew would come to light. That morning, I handed over the keys, but in my heart, I was taking back control. It started 2 weeks before the wedding. I remember the exact moment, the soft hum of the dishwasher, the afternoon sun spilling across the counter, and the unfamiliar number flashing on my phone. When I answered, the voice on the other end belonged to a detective from Chicago. He said he was calling about a woman named Lily Turner. My heart stopped for a beat. He asked if I knew her. At first, I thought it was a mistake. Lily was my soon-to-be daughter-in-law, not someone who'd be connected to the police. But the detective's tone was deliberate, cautious, as if he already knew how much I didn't want to hear what came next. He told me she wasn't who she claimed to be. Her real name was Sarah Milton. She had changed it more than once. She'd been married before. Twice. Both men had been older. Both wealthy. Both stripped of their savings by the time she vanished. There were investigations, sealed settlements, and broken families left behind. I remember sitting down, my hand gripping the edge of the table as the details unfolded. Every new piece of information chipped away at the image I'd built of her, the charming young woman who'd stolen my son's heart. The detective said she was being watched again, not for what she'd done, but for who she might target next. He couldn't intervene unless a crime was in progress. His advice was simple: keep my eyes open. I did more than that. I hired a private investigator the very next day. Within a week, I had the report in my hands, page after page of names, bank accounts, photos, and timelines. The same pattern repeated: a calculated affection, a sudden marriage, and then the quiet destruction of everything her partners owned. I stared at her face in those pictures. Different hair, different smiles, but the same coldness in her eyes. That night, I sat in the dark, the file spread across my lap. I thought about my son, the little boy who used to leave me handwritten notes on the fridge, promising he'd take care of me when he grew up. I had protected him from scraped knees, bad grades, and heartbreaks. But this was something far worse. My first instinct was to tell him everything. But then I remembered the way he looked at me lately, with distance, with doubt, with someone else's words shaping his view of me. If I told him the truth then, he would only think I was jealous. That realization cut deeper than any betrayal. So I decided to wait, to watch, to let her reveal herself in time. I began documenting everything, quietly, carefully, every odd expense, every lie she slipped through conversation, every moment that didn't add up. That was the night my heartbreak hardened into purpose. Love can forgive almost anything, but not deceit that endangers your child. I knew I couldn't save Daniel by pleading. I would have to save him by knowing. And soon, she would know that I knew. We met at a small cafe near the river, 2 weeks before the wedding. The kind of place chosen for civility, Bright tablecloths, the faint smell of coffee, the sound of cups clinking softly. On the surface, it looked like a polite meeting between a mother and her soon-to-be daughter-in-law. But beneath the niceties, something electric pulsed. She arrived late, smiling that perfect, camera-ready smile. I watched her walk in, noting every detail, the way her hands fidgeted with her purse strap, the brief scan of the room before her expression settled. She was composed, but not comfortable. She knew something was different. I kept my tone pleasant. Every word I spoke carried a layer beneath it, something she could feel, but not name. I mentioned the wedding plans, the honeymoon, the lake house. Each topic was deliberate. Her eyes darted slightly when I said the words peaceful, private place. That was my confirmation. As she talked, I studied her. Her charm was mechanical, her laughter a beat too late. She avoided my gaze when she thought I wasn't looking. It wasn't guilt that betrayed her. It was the calculation, the way her eyes measured every sentence for danger. Inside, I felt calm, strangely powerful. For months, I had been the quiet one, the forgiving mother, the background to my son's new life. But in that moment, the balance shifted. I didn't need to confront her with proof or accusations. The silence did it for me. She left the table first, excusing herself with a smile that trembled at the edges. I stayed behind, stirring my coffee long after it went cold. Around me, the cafe hummed with normal life. But for me, something final had clicked into place. I didn't need to ruin her reputation. She would do that herself. I only needed patience, and the truth would take care of the rest. That meeting wasn't about warning her. It was about watching her realize that I already knew. The house felt too quiet after they left. The morning they drove away, I stood at the window watching their car disappear down the long curve of the driveway. The silence that followed wasn't emptiness, it was peace. I had already done what I needed to do. Before they left, I'd made sure everything at the lake house was perfect. Fresh linens, full pantry, even flowers on the counter. I wanted no trace of suspicion, nothing to suggest that my kindness carried weight. What they didn't know was that the smart system I'd installed, the cameras, motion sensors, and account tracking, was all linked to my phone. It wasn't intrusion. It was insurance. 2 nights into their honeymoon, I began to notice the pattern. Lily spent long hours alone on the patio, pacing with her phone pressed tight to her ear. Daniel looked tired in the few clips I caught, a quiet sort of confusion in his face. Then, financial alerts began pinging my inbox. Small transfers at first, then larger ones. She was moving money again, just like she had before. I didn't confront her. I didn't call. Instead, I let the truth take shape on its own. A week earlier, I'd sent Lily's background file to a trusted friend, someone who knew how to handle information delicately. And I'd scheduled an automated email for Daniel, to be sent only if my systems detected irregular activity from the lake house accounts. By the 4th day, the trigger went off. I remember sitting in my living room, the soft glow of the screen reflecting off the glass table as I watched events unfold. I didn't see everything, but I didn't have to. The truth has a sound when it breaks, a silence that follows shock. Daniel called me briefly that evening. His voice was small, trembling, as if he'd seen something he couldn't unsee. I told him to come home when he was ready. That was all. As the sun set over the quiet neighborhood, I felt no triumph, no vindication, only relief, the kind that comes when the world finally corrects itself. I hadn't destroyed anyone. I had simply allowed the truth to breathe, and once it does, it never goes back to sleep. The first sign came early in the morning, a missed call from Daniel, then another. When I finally picked up, I didn't need to hear much. The silence between his words told me everything. The emails had arrived, the transfers had been traced, and Lily was gone. By noon, the story was already unraveling. Transactions flagged, accounts frozen, and a name that didn't match the woman he thought he'd married. The smart security feed confirmed what I already knew. She had left the lake house before dawn, her suitcase in the passenger seat, her phone discarded on the kitchen counter. The same pattern, repeating itself. I sat by the window as the day stretched on, watching clouds gather over the yard. It wasn't triumph I felt. It was ache, the kind that settles deep, even when you know you did the right thing. My son's heart was breaking in real time, and though the truth had saved him, it was cutting him open first. He called again that night. His voice was distant, shaken, heavy, searching for something solid to hold on to. I wanted to reach through the phone, to take away that pain the way I did when he was small. But there are some wounds that need air before they heal. I knew Lily's story would surface in time. People like her always leave a trail, and justice has a strange way of finding those who believe they're untouchable. I didn't need to expose her. The truth had already done that. That night, I turned off my phone and sat in the dark, listening to the hum of the refrigerator, the steady rhythm of my own breathing. The house felt different, lighter somehow. I understood then that truth doesn't arrive gently. It shatters, it clears, and it frees. And freedom, even when born from pain, is still a kind of peace. The house is quiet again. Morning light spills across the kitchen table, touching the same spot where I once sat trying to understand how everything fell apart. Now, it feels different, softer, almost forgiving. It's strange, the way peace arrives after chaos. It doesn't come with joy or relief. It comes quietly, carrying the weight of everything you've lost and everything you've learned. My son still doesn't talk much about what happened, and I don't press him. Healing has its own pace. I know he'll find his way back to trust in time. Sometimes I wonder if I went too far, if I should have let things unfold without my hand in them. But every time I imagine the life he might have lived under her shadow, I know why I did it. Protection isn't always gentle. Love sometimes requires sharp edges. I don't regret exposing the truth, but I do carry the cost of it, the distance, the silence, the ache that comes from knowing you did the right thing and still lost something precious. That's what people don't talk about when they speak of courage. It doesn't feel heroic. It feels lonely. Still, I believe in what it taught me. Boundaries are a form of love. Truth is protection, and silence can be strength. If I could leave my son, and anyone listening, with one lesson, it's this: love doesn't mean saying yes. Sometimes, it means standing still when every part of you wants to turn away. Time has a way of softening even the sharpest memories. The anger has faded now, replaced by something quieter, understanding. My son is healing, slowly learning to see the world again without suspicion. And I'm learning 2. Looking back, I see that truth is rarely gentle, but it is always necessary. Protection doesn't always mean keeping someone safe. It sometimes means showing them what they refuse to see. Love isn't about sacrifice alone. It's about courage. The courage to act, to let go, and to stand alone when silence feels easier. If there's one thing this journey has taught me, it's that peace doesn't come from being right. It comes from being honest, even when it costs you. I wonder, have you ever had to make a choice like that to protect someone, even when it broke your own heart? Tell me in the comments. I read everyone.